In today's video, I want to talk about the reality of going after your dreams. And the reason I want to talk about this is I've spent a big portion of my life going after the things that I'm really interested in. And I've spent a big portion of my life going after those things with a bunch of focus and kind of a high level of intensity. And now, after doing that for what's been probably 10 years, I'm starting to think maybe that's not the best approach to life. And there's another way. Going after dreams is something that's deeply ingrained in our culture. When you think about growing up, what's one of the first questions you remember getting asked? Or I don't know about you, but I know for me, like even at age 5, being asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's really funny to me that we ask this question of 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds or whatever it is. Because when you're a kid, you don't really know. You have no idea what you want to do when you grow up. You kind of just want to be a kid. And I kind of think we should just let kids be kids and figure that stuff out as they go. But when I was really little, I did have a dream. And my dream came out of going to this place in Michigan called South Haven. It was about 45 minutes from where we lived in Michigan. And we used to go out to South Haven 2 or 3 times a year. And when we'd go out, I really remember as a small kid looking out at the sailboats as they'd go out past the pierhead and thinking, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I want to do that. And when I was a kid, I didn't really realize that Lake Michigan wasn't directly connected to the ocean. I would just believe they could sail right to California. But something about that idea of those boats could go anywhere just completely held my imagination. And from that point on, I kind of did make it a life goal. And it was definitely a dream to own a sailboat in South Haven, Michigan. And then I started to move through life, grade school, high school, college. And I got out of college and I got an apartment and the big kid job. And I remember asking, what do I want to do with my life? Because we have these lives, and sometimes what I've found when I end up in moments where there's just a pause, where I'm not doing anything, I tend to ask, what is this all about? And in that moment, I was asking that question. And when I was asking that question at that point in my life, I thought back to when I was a kid. I thought back to those sailboats sailing out of South Haven. And I said, I think that's what I want to do. And so I figured out a way to do it. And about 4 months later, I had my first sailboat, the only sailboat I've had. It was a 1989 Catalina 27, for those of you who know sailboats. And for those of you who also know sailboats, you know that's a pretty inexpensive boat. And I bought it for $9,800 on a loan because I didn't have enough money to buy it in cash. And I kept that sailboat in South Haven, Michigan. And that first year in South Haven, Michigan was absolutely incredible. It was everything you imagine achieving a dream is like. It just felt like constant euphoria. I mean, I just remember sailing out past the pierhead that I used to stand on as a kid, looking out at the sailboats, and people waving at me and saying, beautiful boat, and just thinking, this is as good as it gets. This is the best thing ever. And it was like that whole first year. And then the realities of owning a sailboat sunk in. And I was hit with high costs of projects. I had a lot of projects to do on that boat that I didn't anticipate. There was part of the boat that was rotting that I had to fix. And part of me enjoyed those projects, but they took a lot of time and a lot of money. And I ended up going into debt. It was really, really hard. And at one point in time, I remember I was about in year 2 with that boat, and I was working on a bunch of projects. I was improving the boat, and I was actually trying to set it up to go sailing even further. But I remember talking with someone at the time, and it was actually one of my uncles who is a pretty big sailor. He actually circumnavigated around the world, which now that I'm thinking about it was also a pretty big inspiration for me going after this dream of owning a sailboat. And I remember telling him that I would give up my apartment and I would get rid of my car, but I would never sell my sailboat. And he just looked at me and he said, spoken like a true sailor. Well, a few months later, those things started to happen. I had to give up my apartment because I couldn't afford to have an apartment and a sailboat. And then my car got stolen. It was a little later when the car got stolen. It wasn't one right after the other, but it did happen. And I wound up with just this sailboat and my sails stored underneath the bed at my dad's house. And I'm not saying don't go after your dreams. I'm just saying that when they start to encompass your entire life and take away from your present moment, you want to think about that a little bit. And you want to ask, is this dream still serving you? And if it's not still serving you, you have no obligation towards it. And it's totally okay to put the dream down. Because at the end of the day, you could always come back to a dream. So what I've started to find is whenever a dream is overly taking away from the present moment, it's just really time to reflect and ask, is this dream important enough? Do I believe this dream is significant enough to be sacrificing what I'm sacrificing right now to make it happen? And you really need to get deep with that, or I really needed to get deep with it. And last year, after owning that boat for about 5 years, I ended up selling it. But then the question comes, if maybe going after your dreams, at least really, really rigorously, isn't the best approach, like what is it? What should we be spending our time doing? Recently, I took a trip to Northern California, and this place in Northern California along the coast called Sea Ranch. And Sea Ranch is a place I've been going since I was a very little kid. My grandparents bought a cabin up there in the early 80s, back when it was easier to get into California real estate. And I've always really enjoyed going up there. And I've always really enjoyed going up there because it has a lot of the things I deeply care about. It has amazing little hiking trails, and it's located by the ocean. And on this trip, what I really tried to do is, instead of focusing on the next day, on the next week, on the next year, on the next goal, just disconnect a little bit and focus on the day, on the moment, and the things that I know I really enjoy. Going hiking, being by the ocean, exploring new little towns, taking in the sun, watching the waves come up and hit the beach, or sometimes actually going into the waves. And I think now, what I've started to realize anyway, is that's what I want my life to be about. Those little moments where I'm just doing something I love and recognize it. I remember on that trip, I actually picked up my grandfather's guitar. And in the guitar case, I found this old typed out, with a typewriter version of Country Roads by John Denver. And I started playing it. And for context, my grandfather passed away about 6 months ago. And while I was playing this guitar, my girlfriend actually picked up the camera and started filming me. I didn't realize she was doing this. Almost 7, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. And after I was done playing, I remember looking back at the footage and just like realizing in that moment that that was the person I wanted to be. Country roads take me home to the place I belong. I wanted to be that person playing that guitar in that moment. And that was like a really cool realization, because when I was playing that guitar, I didn't feel like I needed to be anyone else. I just wanted to be who I was in that moment. And I think in life, instead of going after dreams, maybe that's a better approach to things. To find the things that we know we like to do right now, and to focus on doing more of those. Because something you're working towards, you may or may not achieve. That's just the truth of it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't go after things that you really care about. I do believe you should do that. I'm doing that right now with YouTube. It's a Saturday morning and I'm filming this video. And I got up specifically to do this. But after I'm done shooting this and maybe doing a little bit of editing, I'm gonna go out and meet up with some friends and my girlfriend. And I'm not gonna touch this camera for the rest of the weekend. And I think that's what I've started to learn about dreams. It's not an either or. It's a yes and. You can enjoy the present moment and still have things you're working towards. In fact, I think when you enjoy the present moment and you still have things that you're working towards, it's gonna make those more likely to happen because you're not gonna burn out. You're gonna feel alive. And whenever a dream starts to overly take away from that feeling that you are actually here, that you are living your life, it's time just to walk it back a little bit. Someday, equally, I know I'm gonna get another sailboat. Like, I'm a sailor. I have a captain's license. It's a big part of my life. But I'm only gonna do it when I know I'm in a place where when I have that sailboat, it becomes incorporated in my life and I own that dream instead of the dream owning me. And I think that if you balance out your life like that, if you focus on enjoying the little moments first, and then in the background you have these other things that you're working towards with boundaries, I think that is a realistic way to go after your dreams and enjoy your life. You can enjoy the present and have dreams. Thank you so much for watching. and hope to catch you next time.